What is product market fit? It's when somebody sends you a message like, can you overnight it? I'll pay whatever you want. The jet lag product, you can imagine that was a common thing in the early days when it wasn't available just to buy online, was like, oh my God, I need a fly kit. Like, I don't care how much it is, just overnight it to me, please.
Welcome to the Emergent Podcast, where we interview product leaders from emerging technology companies about their work in the trenches to bring the hardest and most impactful technologies to life. Today's guest is Andrew Herr. Andrew is the founder and CEO of Fount. Fount designs sophisticated health and performance products and has developed solutions to challenges ranging from jet lag to PMS. Previously, Andrew led human performance and biotech strategy efforts for the U.S. military, focusing on maximizing the performance of Navy SEALs. Andrew's work has been profiled by the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Wired, numerous other publications, and he's been honored as a mad scientist by the U.S. Army 2 different times, and as a fellow by the Synthetic Biology Leadership Excellence Accelerator and an emerging leader in biosecurity. Andrew also serves as an adjunct professor at Georgetown University, where he teaches about human performance and advanced military technologies. In this episode, we review the top 10 things everyone wants to optimize about their bodies, and then we explore how individual experiments transform into mass market products. We discuss Fount's unique approach of product building, which is fueled by N=1 experiments in their coaching business. We learn how they stay lean while keeping experimentation rapid without sacrificing feedback value or impact. Andrew shares the 4 performance metrics he'd measure continuously if sensors existed for them, and offers surprising insights into who buys biohacking products and who doesn't. We delve into how Fount prototyped its jet lag product in just a few days and why, the importance of viewing product experiments separately from marketing ones, and how they balance customer trust and compliance with their programs through short and long-term wins. We also discuss Fount's master plan for custom programs at scale and its supplement composer product. We even cover how the company's physical product packaging has evolved to better suit customer needs. Finally, we discuss how Andrew distills the hardest science concepts into effective pitches for VCs and explanations for clients. And now, a word from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Tonic AI. Tonic intelligently transforms your sensitive production data into realistic test data that's safe to use across your lower environments to accelerate your engineering velocity while safeguarding data privacy. We've all experienced the pain and wasted cost of building features with unrealistic data in staging your development environments. Mismatches between prod and test data lead to costly bugs in production, poor user experience, and when it comes to RAG or LLM applications, even incorrect answers. Moreover, as the data scale increases, it becomes difficult for developers to test their features with high fidelity. Tonic's products streamline data synthesis, subsetting, and provisioning to get developers the realistic data they need when and where they need it. Get on-demand access to safe, high-fidelity versions of your structured, semi-structured, or free text data to shorten sprints, catch more bugs, and ship better products faster. Visit tonic.ai/emergent to learn more and receive 15% off in your first year. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Adam. Really excited to be here.
Cool. So a lot of people know the term biohacking, but most of us have never really interacted with a company that specializes in it. Can you give us a little bit of an overview of what sorts of problems Fount is designed to solve and what some of those solutions look like?
Sure. So we have 2 sides to our business. One side is a coaching side. And so you come to us and you tell us whatever your goals are. The best question I've ever come up with is, if you had a magic wand and could change anything about your mind or body, what would it be? Really, people kind of comes down to 10 things: energy, focus, mood, sleep, gut health, longevity, fertility, fat, muscle, stress management. So in our coaching service, it's all about, hey, we can solve really or optimize any of these major performance parts of your life, in addition to the athletic stuff. And then on the product side, what we do is we use the data from our coaching service to identify solutions that work really broadly. For most people, you really want to customize. And so with coaching, we're running N=1 experiments, meaning experiments just with you to see what works exactly for your body and your lifestyle. But when we find something that works for 90% of people, we want to turn that into a product to be able to get it out there for a lot of people. And so On the product side, we take those world-class solutions. Like I'm saying, we can send more than 90% of people anywhere in the world with no jet lag. I got to get that out to the world. We can eliminate PMS symptoms for more than 80% of women who have them. So we need to get that to the world. And there, we're looking at jet lag, immunity, fertility, hangovers, PMS are kind of the core productized solutions we have.
Interesting. How many people do you have to have in a study to be able to have high confidence that you can reduce those symptoms in different modalities by such high percentages?
Yeah, I mean, so with the jet lag thing, that's a case series running, over 100 trips to be able to say that with confidence. We offer a full money back guarantee on our jet lag product FlyKit. And I can tell you, we sell a lot of them and we get very few requests for money back. Now, as I think a lot of people know, most people don't ask for money back from products, but we hear from clients if it doesn't work that well. And in the small percentage of people it doesn't, we sometimes can give them special tweaks and we'll send them out like a special booster pack. But it's dramatically effective. And so you really know it when you found something that's incredibly effective. When suddenly, like, for almost all your clients where PMS is an issue, all of them are feeling dramatically better and in ways that you would predict based on the way we've designed the solution, then you can really start to have very high confidence that something's working. But here's the thing. I never say anything we do works for everyone. People are very different physiologically, psychologically, their lifestyles are different. And so to have something that works for 100% of people or anyone that claims it is just frankly bullshit. But I'm pretty happy with, 90+%.
Yeah, it's really interesting because on the pure software side of things, you can kind of fully control the environment. But in your context, your environment is the people and there's software obviously involved, and we'll get to that later, but you're working with people who are basically completely different. But there's some amount of similarity there, right? Like how do you tease out the similarity?
Yeah. So, the way we've done it with our data set is because we run experiments with clients iteratively. So we take the data from the last experiment and what we've learned and use that to go to the next experiment. Because of that, we're really in touch with what's working and what's not. And so, I think the way we do that is we, as a team, all of our coaches and all of our experience, like we're sharing that knowledge, we're documenting what's going on. We'll share like, hey, this protocol is working with this client. You might want to try it for your client with similar situation. And then you start to say, okay, for people who look like X or have test result Y or have goal Z, this protocol or these sets of protocols or, this physiological pathway seems to be the core issue. And that's how you do it. And so we think of, both attacking things through physiology, like what are the pathways we think are involved? And then obviously the toolkits that we have to influence those pathways.
Yeah. And I think for the sake of the audience, maybe you could talk a little bit about how some of those observations you're taking are qualitative, but some of those are actual biological measurements, right?
Yeah. And so it looks like when somebody comes to us, my ideal case is I've got extensive blood work that we're going to order or they bring to us. I've got wearable data like Whoop or Aura data that's giving me things like heart rate variability that's a measure of activation of your sympathetic nervous system or how kind of stressed and recovered your body is. And then I'm going to spend 90 minutes with you doing a deep dive on goals, schedule, habits, environment, family history, because, some people want to believe that everything is just about, my blood work, and blood work can tell you everything. And I can say with high confidence, having been in this space, I don't coach that much anymore. I take like 3 clients at a time, but I have a team of coaches, that the qualitative stuff about your life wins your energy high and low during the day. Now you can quantify that obviously, but we're getting it, it's not like blood work quantified. That's the gold is there. Obviously, when you combine it, it's ideal.
Yeah, it's one of those interesting things where it's probably the case that because blood tests are so plentiful, that's what everybody requests. And obviously it provides a lot of important diagnostic information for many things. But just out of curiosity, like if you could build any medical device and there were no restrictions whatsoever, what is it that you would measure about a person, 24/7 to be able to have the best data to help them do those N=1 experiments on themselves?
Yeah, so I think you really hit it when you said 24/7. Right now, if you get blood work once a month, you're like a 20 sigma outlier. You're like, one in more than a million people. People don't get blood work done that often. But what would be really interesting is a feedback loop, like a continuous glucose monitor, which is, a sensor you put on and has a little microneedle, and that tells you what your blood sugar is, every 5 minutes or continuously throughout the day. And so you can see, oh, I ate this hamburger and my blood sugar did this, versus I ate this bowl of oatmeal, which is supposed to be really healthy, and my blood sugar went to the moon, is really bad for me. Okay, so what's good and what's bad? And real-time feedback would be awesome. And then the other question is like, what don't we have great data on? So there are some inflammatory markers. Inflammation sort of just overactivation of the immune system in a bad way. We usually mean it to mean a bad way. Doesn't technically mean that. But there are so many pathways by which our immune system activates, and inflammation is one of the most important things affecting people's health, performance, recovery. I would love a device that could give me real-time feedback on more than the 2 inflammatory markers you get in blood work. So I think inflammation would be amazing. Better feedback on gut health, which we would get through some of those inflammatory markers. But I know a company that's developing a toilet that can analyze your poop when you go to the bathroom. So I think the answer is and then real-time stress monitoring. The big rocks for most people are stress and inflammation, and then metabolic health. But with metabolic health, we actually have some good sensors like continuous glucose monitors. So if I had real-time continuous monitors for inflammation and for stress, that would be insanely high value. And anyone out there wants to build those things, I'm interested, and maybe I'll write you an angel check.
Excellent. So clearly Fount is involved in many different disciplines of human performance. You've already mentioned jet lag, menstrual cycles, immunity. Each one of these products could be a company entirely by itself. How did you build conviction in which of these offerings would be market successes or failures? And are there ones that Fount abandoned in the earlier days of the company?
Yeah, so, I think the cool thing is we have such a custom supplement production capacity, because we do totally customized programs for our clients, for our coaching clients. And so that allows us to produce these products in a low run rate way. And so it's actually really easy for us to make products. And so we can produce things and then we don't have to have conviction to spend $10 million or, for some of the people with space stuff, $100 million to build something. We can actually build it very cheaply and then put it out in the market and see how people respond, or even hit fairly niche needs. Then the question is what do you put marketing dollars behind? Where do we really focus? And there, we do a lot of testing. And so, we've had to learn a lot about how do you sell a jet lag product, which is something that people get excited about. But if you don't have a trip coming up, then it's not going to, it doesn't matter. You're not going to buy something if you don't have a trip coming up. So it's actually, you have to think about marketing that a little bit more differently. So, for a lot of companies do a lot of influencer sales, but because the average person doesn't have a trip coming up, even if somebody has a big audience, we're on average not going to do as well with that influencer from people buying it just based on a post. And so we have to market things a little bit differently. And we've figured out ways to do that, but the answer is there's a lot of testing. And then the question is really these are things people want. So you asked, how do we get conviction? What is product market fit? It's when somebody sends you a message oh my God, I don't have, I need a refill of this PMS product. Can you overnight it? I'll pay whatever you want. The jet lag product, you can imagine that was a common thing in the early days when it wasn't available just to buy online, was oh my God, I need a fly kit. I don't care how much it is, just overnight it to me, please. And so you start to get these signals of product market fit. And then obviously in a small community, and then you take it to a broader community. And so now we've got it in pro sports. We've got it in high-end like executives. And we're seeing that the demand in the broader market as we expand our, direct consumer marketing is really there, and that product's growing super fast.
Any surprising behavioral or demographics that these things don't resonate with that you guys thought they might resonate with? And you could choose any of the products, but just curious if there's one where it was like, oh yeah, we thought that people, it's like, oh, consultants travel all the time, so they'll probably need this. Anything like that?
I think this wasn't super surprising, but it's useful to know. Like our products are more premium, and so they resonate with people who are slightly older. A lot of people are targeting like, people in their 20s. We're targeting people in their 30s, 40s, 50s with our marketing because one, they have more disposable income, but also, people feel jet lag more as you get older because we discovered that there's a whole inflammatory component to jet lag. And inflammation on average gets worse as you get older. So, we're not targeting people who are super young as much because they're not our target market in two different ways. And so then that obviously affects what platforms we're advertising on. What's I think really cool is that our sales are split about 50-50 between men and women. A lot of brands are totally focused on either male or female audiences, and that's not the case for us. Yeah, I'd say those are some big things. What's been interesting is it's been harder to get a foothold in B2B. You mentioned consultants. We have a bunch of consultants, including senior partners at like the big consulting firms you would know. The firms like Bain, BCG, McKinsey, but the companies are still relatively hard to, we'd like the company to buy it for their people, and that's still really relatively hard to do. We have corporate customers, but we haven't cracked that nut yet. So my hope is that in the next year, we'll get some of these big consulting firms to sign on to buy this for their clients or for their customers and for their employees.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Having spent a little time at one of those firms, it's they're low margin businesses, but then they are willing to spend $20,000 on a box at the Lakers game to woo clients. So it's a strange decision-making structure. Seems like a tough nut.
Maybe there's a way they'll give it to their clients.
As a gift.
We're working with a really cool consulting firm right now that's building FlyKit into this like event they're working with a client. And so again, that seems like a cool opportunity for us.
Awesome. I love to think about emerging tech. My definition is basically things that have never existed before. And I love to try to decompose with founders or product leaders, how you actually got through the hard science or the hard engineering challenges that led you to your success. So if we could take one of these domains, maybe the jet lag product, for example, we know, I think, I don't want to say common knowledge, but sort of a little bit common knowledge for people who pay attention to this stuff is that the body's circadian rhythm is responsive to light. Like that's something that's, fairly well understood by people not in the biohacking space, but they don't really know what that means. And so I guess the question is, if you think about a challenge like that, how do you go from learning there's this connection between light and the circadian rhythm to, hey, you're in the middle of your jet lag program. Now you need to put on light blocking glasses at 9 p.m. on the second day of your trip.
Yeah.
Like how do you make that leap?
Thankfully with software. So the answer is of the jet lag story. I'll go back a little bit. So I was doing some work with Navy SEALs and discovered that the pressure changes when you dive can cause inflammation in the body. Interesting, was trying to figure out ways to use that knowledge to help performance on some unique mission sets. Fast forward, clients coming to us being like, hey, I'm flying from, the East Coast to Asia. We land at, 4 p.m. There's a big dinner that night, and they want to negotiate at 7 a.m. the next morning. Like, in their words, we're getting fucking killed here. Like, they're using the jet lag as a negotiating tool. What should we do about this? What was amazing was like, okay, great. This guy, it was Sunday. The guy was leaving on Tuesday. So I was like, great, I'll deliver you a program tomorrow. And, one of the cool things in this field is we can prototype rapidly. So what did I do on Monday? I sat down and was like, okay, what is everything that is well known about jet lag? And then what are these things I know? Hey, there's major pressure changes in flight. hey, you can't fly after you dive for 24 hours because that pressure change is enough to activate that inflammation problem. Hey, what if we add anti-inflammatory approaches to all the circadian rhythm approaches and not just use light and not just use melatonin, but use supplements that can shift your circadian rhythm the other way? So now I'm like pushing and pulling. What if I can use meal timing, insulin signaling? So basically, I took a career's worth of knowledge and typed out by hand on a Microsoft Word document in a table, at this time, do this thing. At this time, do this thing, and put 4 bottles of pills or 3 or 4 bottles of pills in a kit and dropped it off at this guy's office. Rapid prototyping, this is like 24 hours flash to bang.
When you're thinking about the time differentials, you're also synthesizing in your own brain all of your biological knowledge of how those systems work and how long this takes to process and that sort of thing
like,
as well.
What's the absorption speed? How long is it in your system? So how often do I need to give you this supplement? All those things. And so rapid prototype done totally bespoke by hand.
What made you think in the first place, I can solve this? Like, was it being prodded by the SEALs to come up with solutions? Like, how did you decide? Like, because I think most people wouldn't even touch this.
Like a client asked me a question. He's like, hey, what should I do? And the answer is not, I don't know. The answer is like, great, I'll get you something tomorrow. And so he sends me an email from Korea. He's like, I just slept 8 hours my first night. Like, this is amazing. What did you do? Let's just say by chance he'd been one of the few out of 100 people it doesn't work for. This product would never have existed. But like, it was so dramatically effective in the ways I expected it to be that then it was worth trying again. And then I ran more and more experiments. But now we were at the point where I'm still doing them by hand. So now it's about turning into a product. And so we've had a bunch of iterations and learnings on the packaging side and then on the algorithm side. So on the algorithm side, then I needed to take my knowledge of physiology and turn that into a set of rules. And thankfully, my CTO, Clayton, also worked in a sleep lab. So he basically built an algorithm to do all of the circadian and sleep stuff in an even more sophisticated way than I was doing. And then I layered on the knowledge and how we would build rules to customize the supplements and physiology around that. And when we integrated those two, it produces these incredibly sophisticated plans. And now we just have in the app, you put your information in the app, answer like 4 questions about your body, put in your flights, sleep schedule, and it automatically calculates it and gives you reminders. And so it's super easy now. But the first programs were like literally a PDF of a Microsoft Word document.
It's interesting because you're doing a ton of experimentation on your actual customers. And in a lot of emerging tech settings, they only get a couple of bites at the apple. If you're building some sort of exquisite satellite system, there's only but so many buyers, for example. In your case, how do you build that trust with the customers? Because you are putting, you're asking them to ingest things and put them in their body. What does that interaction look like? And is it just a subset of early adopters that are willing to provide this kind of feedback, or do you find people are pretty open to these experiments?
Yeah, so I think it starts with how are we getting clients, because that defines the type of client we have. So how are we getting clients? A lot of our marketing needs to be around social proof, right? Like, why should you trust us? Our coaching service is incredible, and it's also, $2,500 a month. So somebody has to have faith that we're going to really have a great shot at helping them. And my military background helps with that. Word of mouth helps with that. Case studies help with that. So now someone's come to you and they have some faith and some buy-in to start with. And you need to take advantage of that, not in the bad way, but like really leverage that to get them some quick wins to get their buy-in too. But you also need to work on the big long-term projects. So there's a real balance between early experiments focusing on getting them some quick wins and feedback and building towards the long-term stuff. And if you just do long-term stuff at the beginning, people lose interest, it's not working. And if you just do quick wins, then you're not making progress towards somebody's biggest goals, and that doesn't work either. So there's a real balance of how you manage and work with clients to get them towards their goals. And once you've gotten some wins, then you usually have this sort of, not just trust, but like you got some money in the bank you can withdraw and be like, hey, I want to run this experiment with you. This is a new protocol. It seems to be working, but, can't guarantee it. I also often tell people, I just want you to know some of what I'm going to do with you is going to work. Some of what I'm going to recommend isn't going to work. And some of what I'm going to recommend is going to make you feel worse. And if that's not true, then it means I'm not trying stuff that's really high end enough that we're going to really be able to help you. Because otherwise it's going to be like, eat less sugar. Like, sure, that's for 98% of the population, unless you're an elite athlete, like that's a good piece of advice. But like, thanks, that's probably not what you came to us for. And every time something doesn't work, we're getting data about, okay, that pathway isn't the right one for you. So now we know where to go next. So the answer is like, you build trust, you gain some currency to run experiments, and you be honest with people when something's a new protocol. But there's got to be one thing behind all of that, which is they've got to be able to trust you that it's safe. Like when I'm saying something makes someone feel worse, it's like, oh, like my gut didn't feel great today. And then the next day when you stop doing that thing, it goes back to normal.
Yeah, it's not like they wake up and can't walk or something.
No,
right?
God forbid.
It's within a very small band of how well you feel, how strongly you can think, things like that.
So, and also like, I'm not going to run a brand new experiment with somebody the day before they walk into giving the biggest speech of the year or something. I'm going to do it on a normal day to the extent there is one. And we'll then use that learning so that by the time they get to their biggest sales pitch, biggest speech, biggest on-field performance of the year, they're dialed in.
I've seen the products on the website, but I understand that you have a much bolder vision beyond the ones that are there and the tailored programs for individuals. But I also understand that there's a big constraint that prevented you guys from tackling those in the very earliest stages of the business. Could you talk a little bit about that vision and data as a limitation and how you generalize guidance from the macro level to individual cases?
Sure. So there's a big problem in health and performance and wellness generally, which is that none of the data that exists today in the public domain, or even in big data sets and companies, can ever get you to true customization. What do I mean? If you look at scientific papers, it says like, hey, this supplement helps people, or this drug helps, or this diet is good. That's the results of maybe at best case scenario, like 100 people, the average of those 100 people. But guess what? It helps some of those people and hurts some of those people, even if on average it worked. And some of those people were hyper responders, and some people didn't respond really at all. And so basically what I've come to appreciate about this health space is the data is a total disaster. And you would need to build an entirely new data set to be able to truly customize at scale. What would that data set need to look like? You'd need thousands of N of 1 experiments, meaning experiments just on each individual where we know a lot about each individual. So we can say, hey, it worked for a person and this person looks with all these parameters. And you'd need pre and post data. We'd need to know about what, the data before. That could be subjective, how they feel. That could be blood work. We need post data. What were the changes? And with pretty high fidelity. And then really importantly, you'd ideally want multiple experiments per person, because then you can start to understand what are the patterns of what groups of things work for different people. And this is unlike any data set that's ever existed in the history of health. And that's what we're here and helping to build. This coaching service helps to build that N of 1 data set. People's data is anonymized and we don't share that data, but we use it to train algorithms to be able to customize at bigger scale. Like, hey, I love being able to give you like a former Army Ranger as a coach who has awesome knowledge on physiology and all the tools and can be there and help with compliance and help you work through every issue. I love that. And we do that and we can give people incredible experiences. But I also want to do this for millions of people. And the way to do it for millions of people is to scale that via software. And to scale it for this intensive customization via software, we want to use this unique type of data. And so where are we in that path? We just launched. It's actually it's available publicly, but it's not even on a forward-facing part of our website yet. We just launched this supplement composer system where based on the data from all of our clients, you can answer questions, optionally upload blood work, and it will give you a custom supplement program. And I can tell you that without training the data on training it to really suit to my specific supplement program, my stuff's in the data set, but it's not, special in the data set. In 6 minutes, it gave me a supplement program that's 80% similar to what I've spent 10 years refining. Like, that's incredible. Like, that feels great when the system seems to be that effective.
That's great. So you're really going toward a universal system that provides completely customized and tailored things for individuals, but that can be used by anybody. And it will be, as accurate as it possibly can be, given the information it's been trained on and given the information that's been reported by the individual.
And look, we're going to continue to upgrade that algorithm over time. We just put in some new upgrades to the algorithm, and it's gives even more effective programs where I know what the next set of parameter space that we want to train it on is. So anyways, we'll keep improving it over time. And my goal is to be able to deliver supplement programs and then add on lifestyle recommendations over time. So then you'll get customized recommendations for supplements. Lifestyle will be nutrition, meditation, breath work, sleep stuff, and just build that product over time until it can essentially give you one of these hyper customized programs at software scale, at software pricing.
So let's talk about totally maximizing human performance. We've already talked a little bit about special forces, elite athletes. When a human doesn't care about the consequences that are going to come immediately after whatever activity is about to happen, say a mission or a big playoff game or something like that, and they just want to maximize for a set period of time, what do you do differently? What do you advise differently than you might say to a standard business person who just kind of wants to have a higher average level of performance?
I mean, basically what you're saying is, what do you do when you're willing, what can you do differently when you're willing to trade long-term damage for short-term performance? Because you're essentially always balancing the short and the long term in the kind of work we do. And so the answer is, there are absolutely ways to shut down inflammation and manage stress hormones and I can let people not need to sleep that much for a couple days at a time, but there's always long-term costs. And the cost is like basically wear and tear or like needing to crash for a week after. So there's sort of different types of costs. There's the are you willing to crash afterwards? Or are you just going to keep pushing and know that your body is taking long-term damage? I mean, I know a bunch of people in the special ops community, very few of those people come out without some pretty sizable musculoskeletal back joint injury type things. And, I think in general, many of them feel it was worth it. And so it's not my job to tell them they're wrong. It's my job to help them perform at the level they want to and mitigate the side effects of performing at that level. Now, I'm not saying they're all hopped up on drugs or other things, but if you want to maximize somebody's performance, you're going to absolutely trade off the long term. So yeah, I'd say that's kind of the way to think about it. You can pull an all-nighter on Adderall and probably get much more stuff done. And the next day, if you come off of it, you're going to crash. And so is it worth it? And if you do that 5 days a week, 3 days a week for years of your life, is that good for your brain long-term? Probably not. So, but a lot of people don't care about the long-term. And so that then gets into these questions of ethics. There was some survey years ago where they asked Olympic athletes, if you could take a pill and you guarantee you would win a gold medal, but then you die, I forget what they said, 10 years later, would you take it? And let me tell you, a lot of people said yes. So a lot of people are very focused on their performance and, who knows what would happen in the real situation versus somebody asking a survey question. But obviously people are willing to dope and other things to perform better. And in the military side, there's not even this whole idea of fairness. the only reason I think it's really wrong in a sense to dope in pro sports is you agreed not to do it. But like, we're not trying to fight in a fair way in the military. We used to have these people who'd come from the sports world or Olympics who were like, but it's not right to dope for the military guys, or wouldn't be right if they did. And I was like, I don't want it to be fair. Like, this is silly. Like, the bioethics people are like very silly in the military space usually. So I think that's the key thing is like, what trade-offs are you willing to make? And by the way, people do this all the time in startups. I recently was thinking about how hot nicotine got. So nicotine is an extremely good cognitive enhancer, like maybe the best if for people who don't use it a lot. But if you use it a ton, it will drive stress hormones. The addiction itself means your brain wants it, and so it'll wake you up early so you get less sleep. And it has some like negative effects, even when it's not coming from cigarettes, if you don't use it, manage it properly. Like, probably only want to use it maybe once a week or 1 week every 2 months or something like that. But why are people using it? Because to run a startup, you need to fucking grind. You need to, and people are using caffeine and not sleeping and stimulants. And like, I was doing this in the early days of Fount also, less stimulants, but like using all these tools to not need to sleep as much and working harder. So, so then there's a trade-off. Like, yeah, you probably do need to do some of that to get your startup off the ground. But if you do that forever, you're going to burn out. And then, I don't know about you, but I know a ton of founders who have real trouble with burnout in the middle of the journey. And so what I want people to understand is like, how do we use tools to perform? But like, God, you got to support some things. You need to prevent that, or else, startups are a 10-year journey. And if you burn out at year 4, company doesn't make it.
Yeah, everybody reads the headlines and thinks that it's all an 18-month zero to IPO, but that's just not true for so many of the founders and so many of the fantastic ones.
How many years was Palantir from zero to IPO?
Well, yeah, 16, 17 years. It was a long time.
Right. And so like, yeah, like I'm 5 years into the Fount journey, and like, I'm super excited about where we are. We've still got so much to do. And like, if you'd asked me where I thought we'd be 5 years in at the beginning, I would have, I could have like probably painted a like rosy picture, but like, are we along the path where I wanted to go? Yes. Do I have an amazing team? Incredible. Are we growing? Yeah, really quickly in our core product lines where we're focused. So like, yeah, it's exciting.
This episode is brought to you by Propel Auth. Startups and corporate innovation teams routinely waste months building core user authentication and authorization flows into their products. Propel Auth has automated all the most important pieces of the user management lifecycle. Instantly set up wait lists, magic links, social login, user impersonation, user management, role-based access control, SAML integrations for enterprise, team management, and much more. With Propel Auth, each of these challenges takes just a few lines of code instead of months of development and integration time. And with thoughtful control over design and skinning, it's easy to keep your product fully on brand. Get a generous free starter pack that scales through 1,000 monthly active users, or mention Emergent25 to receive 25% off for the first 6 months for more mature products. Get back to building your actual product and let Propel Auth handle your user management needs. Visit Propel Auth, that's PROPELAUTH.com to learn more. So how much of a role does genetics play in a person's performance? And how does Fount know upfront if a client is going to have success with the interventions given those genetics?
This is not a politically correct thing I'm going to tell you, but it's absolutely scientifically correct. Genetics play an enormous role in performance. The idea that like all people are created equal in the eyes of God and the law should be absolutely. But in intelligence, in athletic performance, in creativity, not even close. And so the answer is that genetics play an extraordinarily important role. But no matter how gifted you are, if you don't take advantage of it, it won't go anywhere. So like, this is something that I don't know would be good for parents to hear or bad, but like, if a kid doesn't have the gift, like genetic gift, they're never going to be a pro athlete at the highest level. I'm like NBA, NFL, that kind of thing. Like all those people are genetically gifted. Might not mean they're the tallest person, but they have some combination of traits that are elite. And then most of them also work incredibly hard. So the people at the top of the top, take Lance Armstrong. The reason he could do so well is because he's absolutely genetically gifted. And he trained his ass off. And he doped. And his genetics worked well with doping. And his training plan worked well with doping. It's like all these factors together are what defines elite performance. But I think the flip side of what I just told you, which is like genetics are huge, is that everybody can get better. And so the negative story is like some people are never going to be as good as others. It's just scientifically very clear at specific things. One person might be better at a different thing than another person. That's all separate. But everybody can get better, and that's the story that matters. And so I'm in the business of helping people reach their goals. And so that means everyone can get better. Now, you asked, how do we handle the genetic variability when we do interventions? Sometimes we know the genetics and we can plan around those. Sometimes we know it directly from the gene, from, people have, gotten a genetics report. Sometimes we can see it in their blood work. Hey, this pattern of labs being off, when somebody who eats a good diet is almost always a sign that they have poor methylation. For example, when you have a bunch of B vitamins levels that are low and you have high homocysteine and you eat a good diet, that's very common that someone has a methylation deficiency. There's a whole series of genes that are known where some people can move around methyl groups between different compounds more easily than others. And it's important for health and performance. And so then I know with very high confidence that this person has this genetic kind of polymorphism or one of a series of them, and then I can work based on that. So either I know it, or when I don't know for sure, that's why we're running experiments. Like, hey, here are the 5 things that work best on average for people who really need to lower their stress levels. Let's test the ones that work best for you. Hey, breath work works great for some people. For other people, it doesn't work. There's this supplement, this extract from cocoa, like from chocolate, that some people can lower their stress hormone levels, and in other people, it makes them jittery and drives it higher. And there's very likely a gut microbiome component, maybe a genetic component, but we actually don't fully know why that is, but we know it works for some people and not for others. So we run the experiment and we iterate. And when I see what's working, this supplement that hits the GABA pathway, which is a neurotransmitter, that seems to be helping. Let's try to go down that pathway further. Or, hey, that didn't work. Let's try a different pathway. So it's like, take all the data you can to make develop the most informed hypotheses and then test them.
For some of your products, there's a digital experience that supplements the offering in addition to a supplement regimen or some other interventions. How did you decide which ones warrant that pairing and which ones don't need that pairing?
I think timing is one of the most underappreciated things in all of health and performance. Like, take cold plunge, very hot right now. People are talking about it. Cold plunge can be great for people. It can help with stress resilience. It can probably lower some inflammation in people. It can be all kinds of benefits for the right person. But if you do it after your workout, you lose 50% of the value of your workout, something like that. Terrible. Certain vitamins that could be good for you, similarly, you take them in the wrong part of your day, could ruin 50% of the value of your workout. So there's all these like timing components. The same thing you might eat in the morning could be bad for you at night, could be good for you pre-workout. So there's all these timing components. And some of them, like circadian rhythms, have these enormous and super critical timing components because we're trying to get you to go from a sleep schedule in LA, let's say, to a sleep schedule in Tokyo that's, forget what that is right now at this time of year, 9 hours off. So I need to sort of like figure out how to shift your timing. So we think like one of the major components is like, when does somebody need custom timing? Like if I can just put a card in the, an instruction card in a product and say, take this an hour before bed, you don't need an app for that. But if something's going to be different for different people, and especially different timing, and especially someone's going to need reminders, those are all ways that a digital experience can help incredibly, right? Like I used to give out the Fly Kit programs as a PDF, and people had to remember to look at them. They had to like figure out what time zone they were on. But now the app just does it all for you and gives you a notification. That's the right way to use a digital experience from my standpoint. And then for the supplement composer, this algorithm that customizes for people, the digital experience is actually giving it the data it needs to give you a custom answer. And there we're actually doing timing too. It's recommending supplements at different times of day. And then we make these like super nice custom packs for you. But like one person, it might recommend L-theanine for stress in the morning, and another person is going to give it at night. And the third person might give you in the afternoon. And then we're just going to make packs that have, what you need for, Adam Judelson's morning, afternoon, evening. And so the algorithm can customize to timing there. And then you don't need an app because it's just like, hey, take this with breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or take this with breakfast and dinner. You don't need an app to remind you to do that, but the digital experience, we need the data to customize for you.
I assume there's also a compliance piece to it as well, right? If there's a lot of instructions and there's reminders.
Yeah, for the Fly Kit app, it's giving you notifications, and that's critical for compliance. So, day-to-day supplements, many people are pretty good at that. And, we're always looking at ways to use digital experience to help. But, we also don't want to like ask you to download an app. It's like those Amazon products that ask you to download an app for like your air purifier. I'm like, bro, I just want this thing to work in the background and like clean my air. Like, I don't want a 700th app or, I don't know, like some silly app that exists now from some Chinese product that you bought off Amazon. Like, no, thank you.
Some buttons are better off as physical buttons than digital buttons.
Right? Like, I don't want to control my kitchen scale via an app. Like, I just need a button that says tear on it so I can reset it.
Right.
So
that makes sense.
We try to we try to focus on the ones where it really improves the experience. And where we're going in the future is having an app that will handle all your lifestyle stuff for you. And so, what we want is an app that knows all the data from the questions like we ask now from supplements, and then also can use us to develop lifestyle programs, can give you reminders, can explain to you how to do the thing. If it's like a breathwork session, like how many seconds are you breathing in and breathing out? And we're going there, and we have the algorithms to recommend the lifestyle stuff already. But, one thing at a time. And the supplement thing, there's already companies out there that have quizzes that give you supplement recommendations. But I gotta be honest, like the results are very unimpressive. And I'm super proud of how effective the protocols our product gives are.
Yeah, it seems like, I'm not the one to judge this, but I know you can. It seems like a lot of those products are just not science-based, right? It's like someone read the label and it says it improves your brain. So they created a quote unquote product and said, buy this cocktail and you'll be fine.
Yeah. Or it's like, hey, these studies said, people who eat less meat should take vitamin B12. And it's like, okay, but we can go deeper than that. Like we can go deeper than multivitamins here. And there are supplements that help with recovery from workouts. There's supplements that help enhance energy and mood in the morning. There's supplements that help modulate your stress hormone levels. There's supplements that help muscle gains. There's supplements that help allergies and immunity, like in ways that are much more than like just taking an emergency pack. So we want to get these protocols that really were only available to sort of people paying tens of thousands of dollars for coaching, or people who had like full-time staff, pro sports teams. We want those protocols available to everybody.
So I know both of us care deeply about data privacy. And at the same time, in order to take all this information from lots of different people and make these characterizations that will help with individuals, there must be some membranes in there to protect while being bullish on finding ways to do more good for more people. How do you guys think about data privacy in your data sets?
Yeah, so step one, we never sell your data to anyone else. Period. There's no like clauses on that. That's just like a yes, we will never do that. Step two is we absolutely use the data to design products. But these are not LLM products in the same way that like you could back out and get it to spit someone's data out. These are making discrete recommendations for you. So you never get, and also there's enough people in the data set at this point that like you can't back out that like, oh, if I imagine, if I pretend to be a 40-year-old male with this and that, it's going to give me a recommendation. I'll know what gym's taking. Like, that's not how this works. So I'd say the way we use these things to build products and the commitment we have to not using identifiable data allows us to ask for very personal data with the confidence I have that we're not putting people at risk. Look, every company has risks of hacking and other things, and we obviously have like an information security program and firewall data and other things. But in terms of the product stuff, it just doesn't expose that data because of the way our algorithms work.
So Fount is obviously trying to create behavioral change for its customers. What have you found works and does not work in getting people to adhere to these programs?
Yeah. So what works? Well, I guess there's two ways to think about it. There's the like something like FlyKit, our jet lag product, which is like you're just doing it for a day. And then there's something like a coaching service where you're doing it for 4 months or longer for many of our clients. And the coaching service is about generating trust. And it's about, as I said, that this mix of delivering quick wins and working on the long term. I wrote a series of blog posts on how to design N-of-1 experiments. And there's a lot in there that I shared about, you need to make sure early on you're showing progress, but it can't be trivial. And so it's really a balance of how you design things. And also just being very clear, like, hey, if you tell somebody everything's going to work, it's going to be super easy and it doesn't, then you've lost trust. With FlyKit, we need to tell you like, hey, you only need to do this for a short amount of time and you're going to get a great benefit. And we're now beefing up a little bit about why you're doing certain things when. And so that seems to help as well. So yeah, I think, compliance is a deeper discussion. The first part of it, really to step back even, is what do you want? Like, if I'm trying to tell you your goals should be X, Y, and Z, and you don't care about those things, let me tell you, you are not going to do them. And so, I said earlier, we start everything with asking people what their goals are. Like, I guess that's the first part of compliance is like, somebody has to care about the thing that they're trying to fix or change or upgrade. And many people come in and they're like, my goal is to be healthier. And I'm like, that's not what you really want. And then we ask more questions and suddenly you find out that what they really want is more energy at 3 p.m. They wish they could stick with deep focus work for longer. And, oh, by the way, they wish their libido was stronger or something like that. Or, hey, I really want to lose like 10 pounds of fat and feel stronger. And my knee's been bothering me for 3 years. Great. Let's work on the things that matter. And oh, by the way, along the way, we can align them with your long-term health as well. No problem. But it's got to be stuff that someone cares about. So I always say nobody cares about their health unless, God forbid, you have like cancer or something. People only care about 4 things: performing at their job or mission, in relationships, friends, family, sex, sports and hobbies, and how you look and feel. So yeah, people just want those 4 things. And those can be great. Like if you really care about your family and your spouse and your kids, great. That's a great reason to want to live longer and be healthier and be able to be stronger when you're older. Great. Well, let's not tie it to this like nebulous health thing that no one really cares about. It's a total loser. There's no dopamine loops. You can't really see quick changes with it. And all we've been trained by our experience with doctors is just to like feel like the health system doesn't care about us and can't really do anything. So I want to talk about these things you might call performance, even if they're very tied to your health.
Perhaps as distinct from many of my guests in emerging technology, you sell direct to consumers. And I've been lucky to see Fount evolve through many revisions, for example, on the physical approach to the fly kit packaging. Can you describe how the full experience from ordering through using the kit have evolved and how you decided to make some of those adjustments to better fit users' needs?
Yeah, I mean, I have the version 0 or version 1 of our fly kit, and it's in this really cool Pelican case, about this big, hard-sided, and everything fit in there, and people didn't like it at all. Why? Everyone thought the Pelican case was cool, and then they realized it's heavy, and it like takes up a lot of room in my bag. Great. And then we started off, as I said, with like a PDF program. I knew that wasn't ideal, but we didn't have the software yet. And then the second generation was a system on our side that automatically created the PDFs. And then we built the app once we had the algorithm and everything running. And now, instead of a hard case, we send everything in like a Mylar bag packaging. And there's an upgrade for a soft case that's super high quality. And honestly, like for $19 for the soft case, that's like a $60 product when you buy it online. But it's an upgrade. And then we found people were asking like, hey, should I wear compression socks? And so now we've made our own really awesome high quality compression socks, and we sell those as an add-on. And initially it was bottles of supplements. And, you know, the issue with bottles, you got to pour them out. If you pour them in your hand, like what are you touching when you're like on a plane? And now we have blister packs, which are super easy. You just pop one pill at a time. You don't touch the other pills. It keeps them fresh for super long time. So yeah, we've changed every element of the packaging and experience based on customer feedback, and we just constantly iterate along the way.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear the different layers, and you guys have, I think, been really creative in, you know, using the digital side to supplement as well with the physical side. For example, I know that, you know, a long time ago you had to like manually type in your flight information. Now you automatically can pull, you know, from the same flight information that you would find on Google Flights or elsewhere.
And soon it's gonna, if you give it access, it'll pull it straight from your calendar. We're gonna launch an update where it will automatically ingest your flights and do all that stuff for you. So we want to make it easier and easier for people over time.
These are some awesome product insights, but I know that you didn't actually come from a formal product background. And so I'd love to hear how you built up your instincts for what makes a great product and what makes a great product person.
Look, my background is running experiments to help people help their health, right? And I don't know, product to me feels like, sure, there's a lot of intuition, there's certainly best practices, but there's a lot of running experiments and gathering data. Instead of blood work or asking somebody how their focus was, it's like, how do they like it? Or do they buy your product again? Or, hey, when you do it this way, do people use your app more? So I still think of it as experiments. And in that way, I think I had a huge advantage. And then my CTO, Clayton, who really you could think of in some ways as our chief product officer also, he has incredible ability to learn things. And so he's taught himself a bunch of design skills that now mean everything looks sleeker, feels better. And so I also credit a lot of, you know, the intuition and building a product. So I credit a lot to him as well.
What about the experiments themselves? Because a lot of people, I would argue, now know this mantra of like, I should be experimenting frequently. Whereas 10 years ago, no one was even talking about that on the product side. But I would argue that, you know, some of the real gold is how you interpret the results from those experiments. Any thoughts to share on how you think about the results and what they mean, or how you put them into context, or how you know when someone is doing a good job at evaluating the results?
I think the best thing I can tell you is, like, by way of analogy with the health stuff, if you ignore your intuition, you'll leave a ton of gold on the ground. Like, if you just use supplement stuff based on studies that have been run, there's tons of, like, I can tell you there's way more cool stuff we can do. In fact, the stuff I figured out about jet lag and inflammation, like basically does not exist in the research literature. But I figured I saw this connection, I tested it and it worked. And I had the faith that it wasn't a fluke. And then I retested it and confirmed that it worked over and over again, obviously. So I think I think it can be dangerous to believe so much in data that you don't use intuition. And then the flip side is also true. If the data shows you your intuition is wrong, you got to honor the data. But then you got to decide where to go next. And that's often an intuition question, unless somebody has data on, what is working. So I think that's my answer is the people who just say there's one best practice or, hey, this is better than your intuition. I think if you have found in life that your intuition is good, then you need to trust yourself. If you found in life your intuition isn't that strong, then maybe go with the best practices. But and you can always and then test it against best practices.
A lot of emerging technology product leaders and founders struggle to bridge the gap from science to investor or engineering work to investor or science to customer or engineering work to customer. And I find you're very good at explaining these complex topics. Do you have a framework in your head for how you distill these complex topics into something understandable? And feel free to use whatever example, but one that resonates with me is around cholesterol. People are always talking about ApoB. I have no idea what ApoB is. And I know it's really complicated, but how do you explain stuff like that? What's your thinking process?
Yeah. Well, there's two questions there. I have a whole framework for how I learned to pitch better to investors. And I think I can go through it really quickly. A lot of people who are technically trained want to explain things in a fairly logical way. I'm going to build X, then Y, then Z. Wrong. Do not do that. It's a disaster. The answer is, I'm building C. And if the investors ask, then you should be able to explain, well, we'll get there via A and B. But these people need a big vision, especially if you're raising venture capital. This is really a venture capital focused kind of piece of advice, because they need these enormous outcomes. They need 1000x outcomes to make their portfolio construction work. So they need to hear the big vision first. And that's actually really hard for a lot of technical people because you can't guarantee it's going to be possible to make the big vision work. And so a lot of people feel like imposter syndrome, or they feel like they're lying. And the piece of advice I share is, do you want to build the big vision? Yes? Okay. Do you believe it's possible? Yes? Okay. Then you are building that thing. Doesn't mean you're guaranteeing it. Just means you're building it. And so when I first started Fount, it was my first pitches were, hey, we're going to build this jet lag product, and then we're going to use that to to build up into building this more comprehensive sleep product. And we're going to build this more comprehensive future human performance product. It was a whole bunch of no's from investors. And then I changed the pitch to, hey, we're going to build this future of human performance product. It's going to be super comprehensive. And then someone asked, here's how we're going to get there. We raised money on that pitch. But here's the pitch that I realized was even better and I would use later. Nobody in the entire history of health and performance has ever built a data set that can get you to true customization. To do that, you would need thousands of N of 1 experiments with rich pre and post data, multiple experiments per person, and no one has ever done that. And we're building this data set, and we're going to be the first people in the history of the world to build customization at scale. It's going to change the entire way we do health and performance. Investors like that pitch.
Yeah, that does land harder.
Could I guarantee we were going to get even to version 1 of that? No, of course I couldn't. But was I building that? You bet your ass I was. And I have done everything I can to will it into existence. And so I in no way was lying or misleading. And so that's my framework is big vision first. Don't even bring up the process stuff unless they ask, basically. Now, what about explaining things in health? I actually don't think it's that hard. I think the people who you've heard it explained from, just basically don't care to explain it to people who don't have all the background knowledge they have. I think they just haven't thought about who their customer is. Like, a doctor's customer is not a doctor, except it was in medical school. And so when they learned to talk about these things, it was a professor or a scientist or a doctor, but your current patients are usually not doctors. So let me try to explain this ApoB thing to you really quickly. We have cholesterol floating around in our blood. Cholesterol is a fat, and that means, oil and water doesn't mix. So fats don't mix, so it needs to be carried by a protein. The protein that carries the cholesterol that we talk about as LDL, or you might have heard as bad cholesterol, is carried in a particle called ApoB. So all of the, quote, bad cholesterol is floating around in ApoB particles. Now, you might ask, is it worse to have more cholesterol in your blood, more bad cholesterol, or more cholesterol in these bad particles, or more particles worse? And it turns out, based on the data, more particles is worse than more cholesterols in less particles. And so when we test LDL on a standard cholesterol test, that's how much cholesterol is in all of the bad particles. And ApoB is just measuring how many of these proteins are around, because there's one ApoB on each of the particles. So that just tells us how many particles there are. So all ApoB is doing is telling us how many bad particles are there. And we know that the number of bad particles is more predictive than the total amount of cholesterol in them. So ApoB is more predictive than your LDL or bad cholesterol. That's it. It's just a measure of how many bad particles you have in your blood. And in general, having too many is a problem.
I love that. Nice and simple, but also methodical, but also not too detailed.
Yeah, I mean, I can go into detail, and there's two different ApoBs, and there's this question, why do some people who have really high numbers of particles have no cardiovascular disease? But what do you need to know to operate in your day-to-day world? And the answer is, you need to know ApoB is a more predictive test than LDL. And in general, without being too low, you want that number to go down, probably.
Okay, last couple of questions here. So what emerging trends or technology developments in your field give you the most excitement, and how does Fount plan to take advantage of these for its grand vision?
I'm really excited. I mentioned before that I want continuous monitoring of all these different new physiological variables, stress, inflammation, things like that. And there's companies working on it. And so that, to me, we're just perfectly situated. If somebody develops those sensors, we have a whole framework and concept for how to use that data. So I love more continuous physiological monitoring, and even just more access. There's been a trend for people to order their own blood tests. Just having more access to your own blood testing gives people more control over their health. So those trends, more data, easier to get. We know how to use that data to test and run experiments. So I think that, to me, is the technology and societal trend that is most valuable. I think it's also becoming cooler to think about your health. I definitely think there's a trend towards thinking more about your health. A lot less people drink in LA. A lot more people are talking about sauna and cold plunge and want to know, hey, Andrew, should I get an infrared sauna or a traditional hot sauna? I think the trend societally is to moving more to this, partially because no one trusts the medical system anymore. Maybe some people trust their doctor. They have a really great one, but most people don't even trust their doctors anymore.
Yeah, they can sense that the incentives are not all aligned toward the human and their condition at the moment, right? There's a lot of other big pieces moving around.
Don't have training in nutrition or sleep, these things that are the biggest pillars of our health almost. So look, God forbid you have cancer or something really serious. I want the best doctors in the world, and I'm going to supplement with the kind of stuff I do. But for your day-to-day health, the medical system has failed.
So where can people find you, would-be customers, future investors, people who want to try out Composer? How can they get in touch?
Yeah, so you can visit us anytime at fount.bio, FOUNT.bio. You can get access to Composer at shop.fount.bio, and click on customize my packs, and it'll walk you through the system. And You can find me on Twitter at Andrew Herr Bio. And we're also on Twitter and Instagram at Fount Bio. So send me a follow on Twitter. Check out our website. Send us any questions you have at concierge@fount.bio. And we'd love to help you reach your optimal health and performance.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. This has been so fun, and I would definitely challenge people. I have asked Andrew some extremely unusual performance questions, and he always has a thoughtful and fantastic answer that is based in science. And I don't know how many scientific papers you read, but it must be a lot of them. So it's been a blast. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks, Adam. Great to be here. Good to chat, and look forward to seeing where the podcast goes as well.
Take care. Thank you so much for listening. Emergent is brought to you by First Principles, where we provide emerging technology product coaching and fractional product leadership to founders with bold visions. If you found this valuable, you can subscribe on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please consider leaving a review or sharing feedback directly with us. You can always find previous episodes, show notes, and more content on www.emergentproduct.com.